2021 is over, and what a year it's been. I don't know about you, but it certainly hasn't gone the way I expected. Then again, after the disaster that was 2020, it's been hard to predict how anything will go. When the year began, I was quite hopeful. Vaccines had started to roll out, I was almost finished with Project Torrim, I was keen to participate in more game jams, and to collaborate with people in the game development space. In many ways I achieved all of this, however not to the scale I had anticipated. Let's wind back to January to see how the year went. It all started with the global game jam and a little game called the Department of Lost and Found. Unfortunately, I found the game underwhelming as it lacked simple things such as animations. This was because I was experimenting with new things such as multiple objectives and a new art style. Despite this, I thoroughly enjoyed the jam. It was a great testing ground where I got to try new ideas and showcase the game to other developers. I had hoped to participate again this year, but unfortunately I don't think I'll be able to. After Global Game Jam, I turned my attention to finishing my Iron Age fantasy tower defense game, Project Torrim. This was my main focus throughout 2020, so finishing it off felt like a real accomplishment. The bulk of the work I did was to improve the performance of the game. I used content pooling and rewrote the collision system to use quad trees. I also made sure it worked on mobile, fixed a lot of bugs, and by April, a full year after the first devlog, it was ready for release. I posted the game as free to play on itch.io, and I was thrilled with the reception it received. It's not the most played game, however, simply from having a devlog series, it reached significantly more players than I could have hoped for otherwise. Most people that played seemed to enjoy it, and they gave me some fantastic feedback. I'm so happy with how the game turned out. Thank you to everybody that played and followed along with its development journey. Once Project Torrim was released, I was a little unsure what to do. Even though I had my next game idea in mind, I wanted a break from a long-term project, so I decided to participate in some game jams. Luckily for me, that was when I was nominated to the Chain Letter Jam by Mr. Moo. I made Super Word Chain, which incorporated the original Mario Bros. Gameplay with the letter gathering mechanics from the game jam. I absolutely love how the game came out. I think it looks good and is really fun to play. I also added all the previous devs in the chain as playable characters, and I invited them to play the game for the devlog. It was really fun collaborating with Vimlark, Wannabe MAYnia, Games by Soul, The Shelfman and Mr. Moo. Speaking of collaboration, I featured in Toffee's game dev tip video with 30 other game devs, and I was invited onto Mr. Moo's Living the Indie Grind podcast. I must admit I'm a bad guest because I don't think I mentioned it at all on my own channel. I highly recommend you check it out after this video as we discussed many cool topics from finishing Project Torrim, starting my museum management game, coding game engines, making devlogs, and the game development community as a whole. Around when I was doing these things, I was participating in MAYnia, which is a month-long art challenge where you create a piece of pixel art every single day. I was a little worried starting this as I was awful at pixel art, but as I saw my skills improve over the month, I was so glad I gave it a go. Even now I'm still using the skills I developed in the challenge to create the art for my museum game. I would definitely be looking to do this again in the future and maybe even try out different art styles. Not long after that was the GMTK Game Jam. I roped in my mate Ed and we made Mr. Blobbin's Big Adventure. I think we had an interesting idea, but the execution was a little off. The game ended up looking pretty weird and didn't have many levels. It was definitely a disappointment for the both of us. That being said, it was the first time anybody else had used my engine. Throughout the jam, I frantically tried to help Ed learn how it worked and shelter him from everything he didn't have much experience in, such as art. It was a really interesting weekend and it showed me that the game engine had a long way to go, which has led to the rewrite I mentioned in my last video. We're about halfway through the year now and things really started to change. Lockdown was easing, I began work on my next big project, and I changed jobs. This new job is still in software development, but it's at a completely different company. When I started, it was quite the culture shock as I'd grown comfortable in my previous role. However, I'm glad I've moved as it's given me many great opportunities to learn technical skills and go to some fun social events. This includes a couple of hackathons, a big summer barbecue, and the East Midlands DDD conference. In some ways it's been weird going to events since this year started in lockdown, but luckily since these events started, COVID jabs have been available, so I felt relatively safe attending. Now Omicron has seemed to have thrown a bit of a spanner in the works, but I'm hopeful that booster jabs will clear any worries we've got at the moment. I guess we'll see. Another thing that I mentioned was I began work on my next big project, my museum management game. I've been thinking about this game for about 2 years now, so I'm so excited to finally be working on it. I spent a good few months honing in on the art style, creating snapshots of how museums will look, and making an in-depth concept museum. Right now I'm rewriting my game engine with a view to create a museum builder demo, which I hope to release in the first quarter of the year. Unfortunately, I've been unable to release regular devlogs like I did with Project Torrim. However, I hope to make up for that by improving the video quality. I really want these devlogs to be able to show off how fantastic the game will be and to dive deep into the nitty-gritty game development details. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to get notified when I release these new videos. Finally, I want to mention my intentions for the rest of the year. As mentioned a few moments ago, I'm planning on releasing my museum builder demo in the first quarter. If that goes down well, I'll be looking at creating new museum types and working on guest AI. I also want to participate in game jams again. Like I mentioned at the start of the video, I don't think I'll be able to do Global Game Jam this year, but I'm hoping to do at least one of the Ludum Dares and the GMTK Game Jam. Not to forget other challenges such as MAYnia and collaborating with fellow game devs. Make sure you check in with me in 2023 to see how those intentions went. And let me know what your game dev intentions are. Are you going to finally release your masterpiece, or are you just trying to have fun making small little projects? Leave a comment down below. Thank you for watching and have a fantastic year.